This is a couple of tweets from yesterday. There was a sudden storm, and people were complaining about the weather. This is Vitalik flying to a conference, and it's always the case. I think weather forecasts are always inaccurate. I mean, companies are trying to do their best, and we are one of them. But that's a normal thing. Yet there's a lot of people that are surprised by this. And we got it right yesterday. Maybe it was luck, but we happened to have a few weather stations here in Brussels, and we had this weird forecast yesterday in the morning when I took the screenshots. So sunshine, 30 degrees, super hot at 2 o'clock, and then rain 2 hours later. And this is exactly what happened. So the middle screenshot is the forecast. The one to the right is what happened in reality, because we have the weather stations and we can see this, and that's how we improve the forecast. And basically that's what our project is about. We utilize a dense network of community-powered weather stations to provide more accurate weather services for the customer's exact location, because that's where we put the weather stations, or the customers put them themselves. And so in this shape and form, we exist 2 years, but the project goes way, way back in time. We've been in this space for more than 10 years. So as a DePIN project, in the last 2 years, we managed to deploy more than 5,500 weather stations all around the world, 80 countries and more. You can see live data, live weather station data, and all the data around them on our Explorer. And essentially, we've built a new economic model for rolling out weather infrastructure. So it starts very simple. Weather station owners, operators are rewarded in our WXM token for their data contribution. And then customers that need the data, need the services that are built on top of this data, they have to pay brokers in the middle, or go straight to the association, to the network, and get the raw data, and they have to pay in some shape or form money that converts into our native token, and that's how our economy works. To support this economy, we had to build our own hardware. I have one over there. I forgot to bring it here, but you can check it out afterwards. And so we have a few different types of weather stations that they are energy and communication autonomous to the extent possible. So they don't require any cables, solar powered. They use Wi-Fi or cellular or helium, which is mentioned quite a few times in today, which is a LoRaWAN wireless network, the Helium IoT, not the Helium Mobile, the original Helium. So the reason why we had to do the hardware ourselves is to add some secure elements in the hardware so we can make sure that nobody can cheat the system, because obviously as soon as you put rewards into a project like this, everybody will try to find ways to take the rewards without doing the work. And these are some photos from our community. There are hundreds, thousands of photos in our Discord server. And these are some rural deployments, very good ones. And these are some house deployments. These guys have put a lot of effort to deploy the stations like this. And these are some crappy ones. I mean, you cannot avoid those, obviously. But having a crypto incentive reward mechanism is really powerful. And so these are some screenshots from our mobile app, and this is one weather station that is out of battery and is losing rewards because it's not sending data all the time, because during the night some of the energy that it's collected from the solar panel is not enough to make this particular station work. The batteries are empty, so basically it's losing rewards. So this is how we manage to improve the quality of data, the quality of the network. And we're in a position that we are super proud that more than 80% of the devices in our network are in perfect condition. And we can detect all the problems by looking at the data, by analyzing the data, and that's how we create the penalties basically on the reward system so people don't get those rewards. And I mean, this is great, and in many ways the the networks that the governments are deploying out there, they are in a worse shape than what we are. This map is from the World Meteorological Organization, and it shows two things. One, that there's a lot of stations that don't have a high quality of data, so they're not they don't transmit data so often. So in the government networks, quality of data usually means uptime. In our case, it has to do with the deployment. We take into account a number of other things because individuals can obviously mess up the deployments more than the specialized people, the meteorologists that deploy this hardware for the sake of the government do. But there is another interesting point here in this graph, the fact that there's countries that don't have weather stations whatsoever, or they substantially lack infrastructure. And the reason for that is that their economies are poor and people cannot afford, well, the governments cannot afford the expensive weather infrastructure that the Western countries have. So that means in those places, weather forecasts are really, really worse than what we are used of here. And this is from our explorer, and you can see the same pattern here, that Latin America and Africa are empty, basically. And Russia and China for other reasons, yeah, I think this is a huge disadvantage for the societies there, but also for the world in general, because you need more data to do a better weather forecasting on a global scale. And there's an interesting fact that most of the food production comes from smallholder farmers from those countries that don't have weather infrastructure, and they are lacking a ton of things, and one of them is weather insurance. So their lives depend on agriculture, but there is no financial or any type of infrastructure that could support them when it comes to weather risk. And we hope in our project we can help solve some of these problems by bringing weather data on chain and enabling parametric weather insurance to go on chain. But in order to do that, we need to deploy hardware there. So we thought that those two problems, they connect very nicely together. From one hand, you have all this missing infrastructure in developing countries. And at the same time, I didn't mention this before, but we have a lot of crypto enthusiasts that love the project and they buy weather stations, but they are too lazy to deploy them because they have to do this, that good deployment to get rewards, and if they do the bad ones, they know they're not going to get any rewards. So that means the hardware just stays in their house forever. So we have roughly, I think, 30% of the devices that we have sold and shipped that remain in people's hands. And that's a normal number. I mean, we've seen it in other projects. Helium has a similar statistic, or even worse. But it shouldn't be that way, and we're trying to fix this. And so we came up with this idea, the Bitcoin cloud mining idea, which is obviously not new. We're just replacing Bitcoin with our token and our use case, which is the weather. And we've been trying to do this for 2 years, actually, now. We've tried many angles. And the one that was the most successful one is 2 weeks ago, when we launched this campaign in Swissborg. Swissborg is a hybrid centralized, decentralized exchange that is powered by the DEXs in the Solana ecosystem in many ways. But at the same time, it looks, from a user perspective, it looks like a typical exchange. So it has a mobile app, and you can just trade tokens. So we created this deal inside Swissborg. By the way, this is the CEO and founder. With me, we're having an interview and explaining the project. So we created this deal where people basically could buy a weather station without receiving the hardware. So they were participating in this economy of our project, but they were offloading the work that they didn't want to do to someone else. And the way that it worked from a user perspective is, in the mobile app, they could see this option to participate in these deals, in these pools, and every pool had some limits, and to take a full ownership or a full leash of a weather station, you had to pay $500 or 750, I think, WXM. I'm not sure on the number, but you could choose either. And basically, you clicked on a button, you made the payment, and that's it. You were an owner, a proud owner of a virtual weather station or an NFT that entitles you to the rewards of a weather station that we will deploy for these users somewhere else. And the result was 1,749 people participated in this, and we raised in a few days $600,000 in USDC and WXM token, which converts to 2,270 weather stations that we are planning to deploy in 11 countries, Global South, that we have created a network of partners there that can help us implement this, and they get a portion of the rewards for doing that. So I think this is a good example of a nicely designed and executed, well, so far at least executed, DePIN service or marketplace, or there's many ways to describe this, where all the stakeholders are going to win something. So the farmers benefit from an improved weather forecast on their location with hardware deployed on their location that they receive for free. And they also get some crypto rewards so they can engage with this new economy that in some of those places is actually quite strong, but in other places is still emerging. So we think we are helping indirectly in many other ways. And the operators or the people in the middle, the logistic companies, the co-ops, because they come in different shapes and forms, the partners that we have established basically, they have more opportunities as well to, they get rewarded in the WXM token, but they also have opportunities to access these technologies and build new use cases around those and act as ecosystem partners basically that could sell weather services or utilize the services that we're building. So they are winning as well. And the Swisswork users that did the initial investment essentially, they get rewards from those stations for 3 years without having to do anything else than pressing a button, and they can feel good that they had a positive impact to the world instead of investing in meme coins, which I'm just continuing the previous discussion on meme coins because I think it is an interesting contrast. And I don't see this shape, this diagram quite often. And we usually in DePIN, we talk about supply and demand. And obviously demand is more difficult. But in WeatherXM, we find ourselves most of the time spending resources and power and brain power in the services. Because I think the services are what they enable the supply and demand to connect together. And essentially what I described before, this whole campaign, raising capital and converting it into hardware, the cloud mining idea, I think is a service that it's a great opportunity for another company to create a generic service and offer it to all the DePIN projects that could utilize this in one way or another. And obviously, we cannot wait for this to happen, but if anyone is working in this space, we would love to interact with them and help or work together, hopefully, for the good of all the DePIN projects.